Hello and welcome to An Old Man Watches, and today I'm going to be talking about Red Rings of Fear, a 1978 Italian thriller. And before I go any further with this video, I want to give a warning that this is a film involving some very unpleasant sexual crimes, and it's kind of sleazy as well in its own tone. So if you don't really want to deal with that, and you don't think that sounds like it's something for you, you should stop the video now, and that's perfectly okay. On the other hand, if you're still with me, then let's begin where the film does, with Police Inspector DeSalvo, who receives an urgent call about a new case. A 17-year-old girl has been raped and murdered. The young woman was a student at a private school, so DeSalvo heads over there to begin his investigation. And it proves to be a truly bizarre case indeed. There are all sorts of weird clues, strange events, and further murders, as well as a 10-year-old girl who is a sister of the murder victim, who keeps popping up with odd bits of evidence. It's all convoluted enough to give even a good cop a hard time, and given that Inspector De Silvo's idea of investigation appears to be to burst into people's bedrooms shouting accusations, I'm not sure he meets the criteria of good cop to begin with. But, despite the film's somewhat sleazy tone, the journey of the film's conclusion is a pretty engaging one on the whole. Now, Red Rings of Fear, sometimes just known as Rings of Fear, has a couple of other English language names as well, such as the somewhat skeevy and grammatically unclear Virgin Killer. It's meant to mean killer of virgins, not virgin who kills. And the succinct one-word option of trauma. This last title is actually the one under which I saw it, but if you do end up searching for it under that title, be aware there are a number of other films that are also named Trauma, including a Spanish thriller that also came from 1978, which very much increases the chance of confusion. Make sure you have the right trauma. Of course, the real question we need to consider first is, should you even go searching for this film under any title at all? And I think that the answer is a very definite maybe. There are several factors I think will greatly influence how much the film does or does not appeal to you. So let's dig into them now, after one last reminder that this film has some nasty stuff in it, and you should leave now if you don't want to hear any more about it. Okay, so this is a giallo film, which is a particular brand of Italian movie known for featuring a lot of horror movie-style gore and violence, as well as plenty of sexuality and eroticism. Now, as it turns out, Red Rings of Fire is comparatively subdued on the gore and violence front, but it shows no such restraint when it comes to sexual content. The film starts with what is probably a kinky sex game, more on the probably part of that sentence later, before segueing into an extended scene with a nude female woman, female body. So the murder victim is naked. She's covered by a very thin sheet. It doesn't conceal anything at all. And during this scene, the police rather crassly discuss the size of the implement used to sexually assault her. After that, the film offers the flimsiest of narrative pretexts to get a whole bevy of attractive women to strip off on camera. Now, the characters these women are playing are high school students, mind you, though hopefully the actors playing them were all older than that. In short, this is a fairly shamelessly exploitative film. While the amount of bare flesh is by no means as frequent in this movie as that in, say, the 1976 sex comedy Revenge of the Cheerleaders, the nude women on display here, and I use the words on display quite deliberately because that's really what it does feel like, are generally naked in situations where they lack power and agency, or where in a real life situation they would not expect to be seen. We are intruding into their private lives in a really voyeuristic way, and the film feels quite sleazy at times because of it. The film also suffers from some rather muddied storytelling. For instance, I mentioned earlier that the film starts with what is probably a kinky sex game, and I say probably because what we actually see on screen is that Inspector DeSalvo spots a woman committing some shoplifting, and he nabs her for it, and then he takes her back to his place for some hanky-panky. So either this is a bit of role play between consenting partners, or our hero is using his authority as a police officer to force sexual favours from a woman. I certainly hope the former case is intended, but the film doesn't explicitly make it clear. The biggest argument for it being a consensual game is that when DeSalvo gets called out for the murder case, he leaves the woman in his apartment. Probably not something you would do if you knew she was a petty thief. And the clarity of scenes is certainly not helped by the English language acting. Whether this is due to a cheap post-production dubbing job or to non-native speakers trying to phonetically deliver English dialogue that they don't really understand, I don't know, but much of the line delivery is really very poor. Is this suspect's stilted line delivery intended to make him look insincere, or is it just a bunch of badly delivered lines? It's frequently very hard to tell, and may make it rather more difficult to follow what is already, frankly, a rather convoluted plot. Now, convoluted and bizarre plots are frequently a feature of Italian thrillers, particularly giallo films like this one. These plots can make them a wild and entertaining ride, where the script bombards you with all kinds of crazy developments, while you're often simultaneously being assaulted visually and aurally by strange camera angles and jarring noises. And at their best, they can exhibit a kind of daring that is not often seen in other cinema. For me, the classic case is Dario Argento's 1975 film Deep Red, which, while far from a flawless movie, definitely has one of the most audacious reveals I've ever seen on film. At their worst, of course, this means that these films can devolve into errant nonsense with lots of meaningless weirdness and lurid set pieces to try and cover up for the fact that the plot does not make a lick of sense. And it's not like you can rely on a particular writer or director to tell you, is this going to be a good one or a bad one? For every brilliantly bold Dario Argento film, there's also a bafflingly dull and disjointed one. I'm pleased to say that this film largely avoids the pit traps into which giallo films often fall. Inspector De Silva might not be a terribly good detective. He certainly seems to be a wildly irresponsible one. But the film's final resolution of the murders is a pretty good one. It's put together pretty neatly, and it is refreshingly non-crazy for a film of this type. So if you can live with the exploitative feel and the sometimes unclear intent of certain scenes, this is a decent little thriller. It's certainly one that ticks along at a very rapid pace, rattling to its conclusion in well under 90 minutes. So that's Red Rings of Fear. Next time, not too long ago we talked about Neverland. Now let's seek out Never Was in the 2005 film with the same name. But that's next time. Until then, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it.